3 weeks ago in Los Angeles, you were talking about how we're evolving, and you brought up you used the words, let's do it the new way. And we went thriving babies, thriving mothers, and I wanted to ask you a question about the 1 second pivot. I know we revel in the contrast and the advantage of pivoting quickly. That puts us into like a step 2 relationship with our inner being. We get to share more time in step 2.
There's a lot going on here.
There is a lot going on here.
We want to start with the 1 second pivot, because the only environment or situation in which someone could experience a 1 second pivot, meaning know what I don't want, know what I do want, is if you're in this more neutral zone where there's not much variance between satisfied and not satisfied. The more variance there is, then the more of what you call time it takes for you to focus yourself into different momentum. Because law of attraction is the engine behind all of this. So if you've got a lot of momentum taking you away from who you are, you're not coming back in 1 second, unless that's the second the truck hits you and you move into non-physical.
Right. I understand.
And so the 1 second pivot, it really is what we're guiding you toward. That's being close enough there that you can make that choice. Otherwise, the further you get from knowing what you don't want and knowing what you do want, then the more of what you call time it takes for you to move yourself thought by thought by thought by thought into the vicinity of alignment. Meditation is the fastest way we know of. And if you're reading the Ask and It Is Given book, take a look at them if you're interested. But they are different processes for different situations that you might find yourself in. And all of them define what emotions might be present when this particular process might be helpful. The only process that covers all of the emotions that's helpful no matter where you are is the process of meditation. Because in meditation, if you've got lots of contrast active in your vibration and you are able to quiet your mind, which we believe anyone can do once they understand how easy it is to do it. Once you quiet your mind, your vibration rises immediately. And that is the most magnificent pivot that we can think of, because the raising of vibration and then the discovery or the accomplishing of vibrational mutuality with your inner being gives you access to infinite intelligence and good timing about all things that pertain to you. Is that what you're getting at?
That's exactly what I'm getting at. The next question is, would you speak to the surrender of our compliance with our inner being in the receiving mode?
We don't actually use the word surrender that much. A lot of teachers do. But what we would mean if we were using the word, we would mean releasing resistance. We would never mean giving up desire, because you can't. You can't give up the expansion that life has caused you to accomplish, which is where your inner being stands. But surrendering is giving up the beliefs that are preventing you from moving in the direction. Giving them up or suspending them. Surrender, suspender. Suspending them. Just letting them not be active. Well, most people don't do that. Something happened to you 20 years ago. Most people talked about it 20 years ago and 19 years ago and 18 years ago and 17, 16, and talked about it today. In other words, you keep updating the vibration of it. So you haven't suspended the vibration of it under those conditions. You've kept it active. So it's not likely that you're going to have a 1 second pivot now and that all of a sudden you're going to surrender a vibration that you've been practicing all this time. Because law of attraction has helped you to keep it active, and it's illogical that you would surrender it unless you find some way to quiet your mind. And when you meditate, do you meditate? When you find yourself in that sort of detached state where you can't really tell your nose from your toe, that detached state where you're just sort of floating and drifting and not thinking, that is the ultimate surrendering or suspending or deactivating of contrasting thought, which allows an instant pivot into all the thought that your inner being has about you. But now hear this. You got there through releasing resistance. And now you're in that satisfying place of non-resistance. Even though your inner being knows everything you want and where every bit of it is and how you can get there, your inner being isn't all of a sudden force-feeding you with all of those ideas. Instead, your inner being is allowing you to acclimate to the momentum, and then as the thoughts begin to flow and you acclimate to those thoughts, then you get to witness the improvement of your life. So what are you getting at here?
I'm getting at, I want to go over it again. The context was Jerry had read a headline and it said, babies and mothers hungry, no medicine. And then a group like this, we got together, and in 10 days, they lifted the blockade. And I said, I want to flow this jet stream on this high flying into the subject.
We want to discuss this fully with you, and we understand completely what you want. So just relax and let's chew through this for a moment. So the idea of this is that I'm here in this physical body, and that through it I've witnessed things like headlines of things I don't want that have caused me to want children to be fed and medicine to get where it needs to be and people to thrive rather than suffer and prosperity to abound. And there's so much that I want because of the headlines that I've witnessed. Not only I, but billions of others have created this collective vortex of well-being, and source is all over it. But now, in my human form, I want to help it along even more than I have been. I've been part of creating this asking, and I'm maybe one of the few who understands that the answering is already there, that it's already been given. So now I want to, this is what we hear from you, I want to be a further help in turning those thoughts into a reality than I have been. So how can I best focus my mind in order to get the food where it needs to be and get the babies back with their parents and help soothe the wounds that are bleeding? And what can I do to help? And what we really want you to know is that you've done all that you need to do, maybe not all that you want to do. But you've done all that needs to be done, in that you have identified the problem, which caused you to identify the solution. And if you can trust that source energy is all over the solution, then you living happily ever after is the most that you can do. But that goes contrary to what most people think, because it feels like, wait a minute, they're still suffering and I'm living happily ever after. How does that square? How can me living happily ever after, how can my satisfaction be of benefit to anyone? Because in your satisfaction, you've lifted the vibrational blockade. In your satisfaction, now you are a conduit through which more well-being can flow, where more good timing can flow. And so it is our promise to you, as you hold yourself in a place of satisfaction by not taking score. You see, that's the only thing about this scenario that you've explained to us that isn't the best one, because when you intend to do good and then you watch to see the good you've done, you often are aware of what's not happening as much as you are aware of what is happening. So you have to stay satisfied. You have to be satisfied the source energy is on it. You have to be satisfied that you've launched the rocket. You have to be satisfied that the vibrational reality exists. You have to feel satisfied that everyone has the ability to get what they want. You have to feel satisfied that you are satisfied. That's the most important thing. Be satisfied that you are satisfied, and then ask for awareness of improvement. Ask for awareness that the pressure is being taken off. Watch for the benefit. Esther finds herself feeling like you're feeling often because she thinks, I'm living happily ever after. Can't I use my alignment in ways to really put some emphasis on some things that could really matter? But almost every time she steps into that arena, she doesn't mean to, but she finds herself pushing against those she believes caused the problem. And then she's worthless to the solution, because now she's back in step 1 again. So you got to really be in step 5. You got to be really willing to give up your attitude about the problem causers and surrender yourself to the solution. You have to surrender yourself to the solution. It's one or the other. You can't be active on both.
So what you're saying is, the answer is laughing and singing and playing all day, that's it.
And feeling interested and feeling proud of yourself and liking what you see in others and seeing the positive aspects in that and that and that, and adoring the planet and loving the way the ocean is and seeing how blue the water is and appreciating the balance of the planet and devouring the food and feeling appreciation for all of those who contributed to the bringing of it to you. It's endless. It just goes on and on and on and on. There is so much to focus upon that gives you satisfaction.
I'm completely satisfied.
Really good. Good conversation.
It feels so good to be here. And it feels so good to talk to myself in some way.
We want to say something about that just briefly, and that is, it feels good for someone to get you But it's only your own inner being who ever really does.
That's what I mean by saying that.
Yeah, we knew you knew. We just wanted them to know what you know.
That's exactly for the reason of that. I wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
And I want to say this way. RT was sleeping, and he woke up to observe a thought that was random. But it was so interesting that he decided that he wanted to bring it to this gathering. And the thought was, why would something, which is everything, would want to expand? Because we talk about expansion all the time. Why would something that is everything, which is God or source or whatever we call that, would want to expand where? If it's everything, where it wants to expand, and what is the reason of that?
Because everything must expand or it can't be anything. If everything is not expanding, then it isn't anything. Everything implies perfection or finished, and there isn't any of that. Eternity is the name of this game. Expansion, more, becoming. Because if you're not becoming, then you're unbecoming, and you can't unbecome because there's no regression.
Exactly. Exactly. And the thing goes from that question is why the source is positive energy and not negative or something that is...
Because in every moment, there is an asking for and a discovery of. Here's the easy to hear answer. Here you are in your physical beingness, and whether you understand it or not, you are an extension of source energy. And you are out on the bleeding edge where there is contrast that is uncomfortable. But that contrast does cause expansion, whether you know that it does or not. And so, whether you know that it has happened or not, you have become more than you were. And when you croak, which is our disrespectful way of saying when you die, because there is no death, when you leave this consciousness, when your consciousness leaves this body in this format and you reemerge into non-physical, you leave behind all doubts and fears and everything that you pushed against. And the whole of you receive the full expansion of that which is you. And then it is from that vantage point, with no resistance within it, that you make the decision to come back again. And so you could say, it's not really the best way, but it might be more understandable that the experience of what you call death is the true filtering process, where you only take with you who you really are and all that you've asked for, and you leave behind everything that is doubtful. That's why there are generations that are here, many of them at the same time, and they write histories, and they work very hard, humans do, at introducing the new ones to the old beliefs and the old ideas. And so they do a pretty good job of passing the baton of resistance from one generation to another. But they don't do nearly the best job of passing the baton of resistance from one generation to the next, as the source energy passes the baton of your well-being, of your goodness, of your worthiness. Pretty good, eh?
Exactly the way it is.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
When Jerry made his transition, Esther's mate, you may know about him, you may not. He's been gone for a few years. Not gone, different. He was, from Esther's perspective, a perfect human being. He was easy to be with. They were laughing and scratching and having a wonderful time all day, every day. When he made his transition into non-physical, Esther felt great loneliness and separation from him for a while, because she couldn't find him, because she was looking for him where he'd been instead of where he is. And it took her a little while to realize that as perfect as she found him to be, he held beliefs that were resistant in nature. And as Esther was reaching for her own expansion, she couldn't include her new expansion with some of Jerry's beliefs. So for a while, she wasn't willing to take her new expansion because it felt more important to her to hold to Jerry's beliefs. We have rules and policies that we must adhere to. We must follow Jerry's lead. It took quite a while for her to realize that she has Jerry now, and that he's looking differently at things than he once was. So one day, when she was complaining about not being able to find him, after she settled down and took her nap and did her meditation, she heard us say, look for him where he is, not where he was. And that really is the key to what you're talking about. You got to look to it where it is. And once you hone into that and find it, you will never be confused again about why the goodness prevails always. And it does. It does.